So you said uh, when someone gives you a glass of hot water, you don't need to think whether that is hot or cold. You will immediately know as soon as you sip, as soon as you take a sip. I mean that's really very clear cut, but you know things in real life uh, aren't really uh, that clear cut. For example, um, if I have something to convey to communicate to my loved one, and I'll think whether that will have any negative consequence on my loved one. And since we live in a probabilistic world, as in it's not mathematical, we are 100% certain of how reality unfolds. Oh, okay, they may feel bad when I say this, or that may strain my relation. So things like that will pop up, and it creates a certain sense of anxiety. This is very unlike to the example you give. Like when somebody gives a glass of hot water, you'll immediately know whether that is hot or cold. You don't need to think about it because observer, observed, and phenomena, all these three happen together. But when feelings take over, the separation will come forth, and I consider that to be suffering. Do you have any suggestion regarding this? I mean, the example you give is bright. I mean, perfect, but it's also simplistic, reductionist. I mean, are you getting what I'm asking?
Yeah, well, I hope so.
Okay.
I will try to reply to what I heard, and if I got it wrong, you can correct me. If I if I understand what you said, you feel a kind of suffering
Hmm.
that comes from what you're calling separation. Is that right?
Yes, in certain situations, when feelings take over reasoning, I mean, it's not really easy to make a decision. In the example you gave, it's very easy. I mean, we immediately know. For example, if I have to go to loo, then we immediately know, or sensory feelings like a glass of hot water. I'll immediately know that is hot. I don't have to think. I mean, they're the observer and observed. There's no difference between these two and the observing. These three are in harmony, but in relations, um, the separation pushes forth, and that creates a sense of anxiety, and anxiety is suffering, isn't it so?
Hmm.
So,
Yeah.
any comment, any remark, any suggestion regarding that?
Yes.
Hmm.
Well, the example that I gave, where I said, if someone gives you some water to drink and you taste it, you don't have to ask yourself if it's hot or cold. You just know that. And that was an example of what I call choiceless awareness. You don't choose to be aware, you are aware. Say people are always imagining that you have to choose to be aware. But the point here is that you are aware. It's part of your nature as an animal. My donkeys are aware too. They're aware of things of which I'm not aware because their hearing is so much better than mine. They can hear things that happen 2 or 3 miles away and they turn their ears in every direction like this. So they are living in a world that is not my world, it's their world. On the other hand, I know all kinds of things that they don't know about. And if they did know about them, they might be frightened the way we humans are frightened that we're destroying our world and that there's wars and murder and all this stuff that my donkeys don't know anything about. So I've got my world and the donkeys have their world. You're clear on this, what I'm saying here? Each of us has one's own world, and it's based on what we notice, what we can notice, and what we do notice. So if I understand what you're saying that you become aware of thoughts and feelings and they disturb you. And it's not just like if water is hot or cold, because that doesn't really matter. But the things that disturb you to you really do matter. Is that the idea?
Uh, yeah, when feelings take over, then the separation comes forth. Uh, when the feelings are sensory feelings, then the separation doesn't exist. But when emotional feelings, you know, when they come forth, then the separation exists. I mean,
Mhm.
it's not a flow, it's not one harmony. They exist the way of existence.
Yes, well, but so let me ask you a question. Do you imagine that you ought to be able to live a life on earth without feeling, without suffering? Do you imagine that there's some way to live without?
No, 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 no. Um, no, it's not without suffering, but I think the way uh, humans, the non-awakened people, uh, feel suffering, it's different from people like you feel suffering. Isn't it true?
Yes, of course, I suffer. Of course, I'm a human. We
Yeah,
all,
yeah. I mean, the way you suffer is different from the way I or any other non-awakened being suffer. Is that true?
I didn't understand that. Say it again.
The way I suffer is different from the way you suffer because you are awakened.
Wait a minute.
Uh,
How do you know
okay.
the way you suffer is not the same as the way I suffer? How do you know that?
um, that's presumption. I
Oh,
don't really know.
if there is a difference, I'm not saying there is. I have no way of knowing that because I don't know how it is for you to suffer. I only know how it is for me to suffer. I have no way of knowing what your suffering is like.
Mhm.
Yes, you could tell me about it, but
True, true. Yes,
yes. So,
you'll see with your eyes,
see, so,
even if I tell.
so if there is a difference between you and me, I think the difference is that I am not trying to not suffer. I'm just going to deal with whatever is in this moment as best I can. And if it's suffering, okay, then I have to just suffer. I mean, that's what choice do I have? I don't. See, and that's the example of the water. You just notice if the water is hot or cold. You didn't make it hot or cold. And it's the same way with suffering. If I have a bad thought and I start to suffer, what can I do about it? You see, the thought is there. I could tell myself, oh, you mustn't suffer because a realized being wouldn't suffer. You see, I'm spiritual, I don't have to suffer. The Buddha didn't suffer. I could say that to myself, but I'm still suffering. So if there is a difference between you and me, I just accept everything as it is to the best of my ability. And I'm not trying to make it be different. It is what it is. Our lives are short and they are what they are. And if we worry too much about feeling better all the time and avoiding suffering, then we don't really live because living involves suffering. Yes? I don't know if I'm making this clear. It's it's simple but hard to understand.
Yes, yes, it is. It is. Um,
You're a very beautiful guy.
okay, I'll reflect on this, and if I have any.
You you see,
Sorry.
I said you're a very beautiful guy. I see you going through this. I see you trying to express something, and it's very
Oh,
beautiful.
okay.
Beautiful. You see, you have this sensitivity, and when you're sensitive, you do suffer. When you're sensitive, you suffer. There's no getting around it. That's what suffering is. The sensitivity of your mind and your body, something impinges on that and it hurts. That's a quality that you have, a living quality that you have. So my advice to you, if you want advice, is to embrace that and to say, gee, I'm a very sensitive kind of guy. So of course I'm going to suffer.
Okay. Um.
And that, and that will be seeing things more as they are. Then you will be seeing yourself more as you really are. You're this guy who feels a lot, and those feelings hurt you sometimes. And you may feel, I wish I didn't have those feelings, but that's not a choice. You don't have that option. You can't decide to not feel what you feel. You feel it. By the time you know what you're feeling, it's too late to change it. You've already felt it.
Mm-hmm.
So there's nothing to fix.
Okay. Um, did you go through any stages of uh, awakening? As in, I mean, you said awakening is never ending. Your perceptions, your Weltanschauung, it keeps varying, and consequently, the way you live will vary. Therefore, awakening is never ending. But you know, were there any step-like stages? Um, I don't know how to put it.
Well, I understand your question. You don't have to explain.
Okay.
Just so hard to answer that question because how do I know that? I've had many experiences in my life, and I'm sure I was influenced by all of them in one way or another. But it's hard to say that there are stages. I mean, each moment is what it is. We hear things, we learn things, we have experiences, we have relationships with other people, and all of that adds up to this. I don't see any stages in it. It just is what it is. You see,
So,
shall I continue just a moment? When I say awake, I'm not talking about enlightenment, where these gurus tell you, yes, you're now in the third dawn or whatever it is, and if you do the right thing, you'll next week you might be in the fourth one, and then climb the ladder to heaven, and eventually you become enlightened like me. No, I'm not saying that. You see, when I say I'm awake, I just mean that I see things in this moment clearly. I'm awake. There's no perfection in it. There's nothing to attain. We are what we are. We can't fix it. We can't make it into something else. This is it. What you are now is what you are. What you are right now is what you are. The moment you see, and if this suffering is there, yes, it is. That's it. There's no fix. People can offer you a path and tell you, get on the path here, follow my instructions, you meditate or whatever they teach you, and maybe in 10 years you'll be enlightened too, and then you won't suffer. Really? And you believe that lie because the man has nice robes and many followers? Why? Why do you believe that? I'm seeing the light come on there. I saw the light come on there for a minute. Let yourself feel that light. You don't have to run around chasing after anything. Just be what you are. That's what I'm doing. If it looks good to you, there's no secret to it. I'm just being the way I am. With suffering, with sadness, with tears, with fear. That's part of being human.